All right, welcome back, everybody. Thursday afternoon, and it's episode number 54 of The Brick Wall. I'm really pleased to be joined by Dr. Henry Sheinkopf, better known as Hank of Sheinkopf Communications. Thanks so much for joining me. Where are you right now?
Well, I was in the city yesterday. I've been back in Manhattan, which is very odd, 5 times since March 13th, and yesterday was one of those days. So now I'm in West Hampton Beach, looking at a canal outside the window here. I'm very happy to do so.
Absolutely. So good to get out of the city, which
I'm very fortunate. There was a time in my life when I hated to leave the city for a nanosecond, because I thought I'd be missing something, But now I went back yesterday, and there's not much to miss because there's nothing happening.
It's funny. I don't know if you remember this, but way back in the day when I was just starting my business out, you gave me the advice: if you want to really succeed, get out of Brooklyn, because I was in downtown Brooklyn. I'm going to move to Manhattan. I did that, succeeded, or in that process, but I don't really want to go back there anymore. So it's
well, look, we all go through stages. When I first started, I had a desk and then you had, I think, licensed workers' compensation representative, and a guy named Frank Marin, who I'd worked with on a couple of campaigns, was very kind to me, and he gave me a desk in his office. And you had to rent a typewriter because in IBM Selectors there was no computers. And there were no cell phones, so the phone company required that you give them a deposit. I did all that. Somehow it was the last couple of bucks I had, because I just gone through it. I was in the process of going through a divorce. I had no friends, I had no phones, I had no money, and I had no clients. So you were lucky.
Yeah.
You had some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, your website says, and I know from years of knowing you and your experience. I mean, 700 campaigns on 4 continents. I mean, that's an incredible career history. Do you want to take us through how from the no clients to to that amazing career?
I was fortunate. Everybody wants to say that they did it, but the truth is I was in the right place. It was the right time of history. I was first and foremost, still am a very good PR guy. That's my skill. That's my real skill. The rest of it kind of happened by accident. I mean, I don't even know how it all worked out. I mean, this was not what I expected from my life. I was a poor blue collar guy. Dropped out of high school. I had no plans to finish high school. Certainly not to go to college, and certainly not to go to the White House. So I worked for one president here, presidents and heads of state all over the world, particularly in the Caribbean. And I've seen a lot of things that this business has allowed me the opportunity to do things I never thought I would do. Not the work, but to see America and to see the rest of the world. And for someone like me who came from where I came from, I mean, it's been quite a blessing, and I'm quite fortunate. I'm grateful.
So since we're talking about that, and I appreciate, a lot of people, rise to their peak and they don't remain humble and recognize things like that. So, that wow moment, because again, doing 700 campaigns and, having, tons of clients, corporate and, and public affairs, what was the most recent campaign that you worked on where you were like, wow, holy shit, I can't believe I'm doing this, that excited you?
But they haven't excited me in a long time. I'm about to get excited because I'm coming into 2021 and I don't want to travel much anymore. Not because I'm older, because it's harder to do it. I mean, the things I care, I'll have major campaigns in this region, the New York region next year. Not a problem. But the campaigns that excited me the most were not things that were high profile necessarily, or that were important in the eyes of some. The campaigns that excited me were things I did years back where, like, for example, I worked for the Alabama Education Association for many years, and the trial lawyers there, and taking on the business council, much more funded, going after Paul Rove, who was Bush's guy, who had the other side, seeing my name mentioned and being attacked in the minutes of the Business Council of Alabama, fighting for things I thought were important. Look, I'm a Buccaneer. I don't mind admitting it. My skills were pretty significant. I was very fortunate. I had that God-given ability. I didn't go to school to learn any of this. And I felt an obligation to participate in things that had some social value. And I did. And I made a buck doing it. Paladin made a buck too, whatever it was. Richard Boone is Paladin. For those who are alive and remember that, why are Paladin in San Francisco? Well, I used to get on an airplane, and I'd get an airplane Sunday night or Monday morning, and I'd come back Friday afternoon. That was my life for 30 years. And then 9/11 intervened and made it much more difficult to travel around the world. But I think the things that were the most interesting were things that we don't, was it interesting to be in the White House? It had its moments, but those are mostly process driven. I like getting on that airplane, getting off the plane someplace, having to be on your toes, be a genius immediately, write great stuff, get it up on the air, because I shot ads for a long time. And then, I just lost interest in mediocre work for a while, and I lost interest. So, but getting on and knowing that people depended upon you to get something important done. A friend of mine just celebrated his 70th birthday in Alabama, a guy named Joe Perkins. And what I noted is that the basic notion of who we are and what we do has changed so dramatically because everybody thinks it's cash register. They believe somehow this is corporate structure to the political consulting business, which is nonsense. We were really a closet. We were really a cottage industry of people who were entrepreneurs, hit the road, and just went out and did it. I'd get off that plane with whatever I was using, whether it be a typewriter or computer, and I just knock the stuff out and get on the next stop.
That's it's interesting, and I'm happy that you dug into the early career, because I feel like that's when the excitement and energy comes out. And
we had real things to do. I mean, I just wrote a thing for Joe, 70th birthday. I said, there was a different time. The extinction of the lone single operator who gets on a plane, goes to a place to do a job, and then goes on to the next without having dollars hanging out of his or her pocket is over. With the sense of righteous indignation and care for not so much content but his craft. Because nobody believes that there's this kind of sense that it doesn't matter whether your work is lousy or not, so long as you don't offend the guys on the other side. And if you offend them, you won't work. But my view has always been that if you do quality work and you offend the other guys on the other side, who cares? Your job is to be offensive. When you go to work for a client, your job is to fight. Today, when I'm in the PR arena and I'm fighting for a client, I fight for my clients. I really don't care what the other side or anybody thinks. They can say the nastiest things about me. I have some general rules when it comes to, and have had since the beginning of my career, when it comes to consultants, other consultants on the PR side or any other side, on the political side, the film side, and reporters. I don't eat with them. I don't sleep with them. I don't drink with them. I don't socialize with them. I do my work with them. Because the minute you get seduced by the business rather than by doing the business of your clients, you lose your edge, and you also get sloppy, lazy, and non-combative. And people are paying you money. In politics, they've got to raise it and go through extraordinary things to do that. They're paying you money to do a job and to fight for them. They're not paying you to go in the tank.
That's that's fantastic advice. And I know a lot of folks who, especially in the PR industry, who, I don't know about sleep with, but definitely eat with and drink with, because they think that that's going to lower barriers and make those relationships smoother so that they can, do things, especially in the crisis arena. But that's a fascinating perspective.
No, I've handled. Look, I had a governor named McGreevy who walked out the door and was gay. Right, I took care of that. I had a wrestler who decided to throw a shot glass at his girlfriend with billions of dollars at stake. I took care of that. What did I have? I've had nonprofits with the sexcapades, major larcenies, drug scandals, real estate scandals, battles in court over ownership of property, public events, riots. I've done them too. For when people are, I didn't create them, but when there are players involved in those riots, both on the police side and the other side, I've been there. If you drink with a reporter, it doesn't make you any better. He's not going to say, or she's not going to say, oh, you're wonderful. What the trick is in all those settings, in my experience, is to get the credibility to be able to get your job done, not to be socializing. Being socializing doesn't help get the work done, because reporters have a different job. I think people in our business get very confused. They don't understand what side of the notebook you're on. I am a fortunate guy in that even the reporters who don't like me trust my word, because I'm not going to lie, and I'm going to give them what they need to get that story done. And the minute we forget that the job is to give people what they need to get a story done, we lose our credibility. And by helping them get the story done, we maintain our professionalism as well as protect our clients. It's when we think we can cut a deal, that it's a contract, that you get into trouble. There are none.
That's really good advice for everyone in the PR industry and those starting out. So I want to zoom out for a minute because we're living in an unprecedented time and it's been crazy. I think that I'm going to ask you not a tough question, but I want you to assess and analyze the 2020 election, but removing COVID and then the BLM movement from it, and then we can insert those back in the tail end to because obviously it's creating an uproar in a much crazier environment than we anticipated.
Well, I'm the idiot. I'm one of the few idiots that predicted as a pundit that Trump would win. I said it in May of 2016. In January 2016, I said he'd be the nominee of the Republican Party. People thought I was out of my mind. Well, I am out of my mind, but I was right about that. Do I think Donald Trump can win? The answer is yes. Do I think the election is decided? The answer is no. Do I think this country is going through very difficult times, which should frighten people? The answer is yes, but not for the reasons we think. The Black Lives Matter movement is a response, obviously, to what some perceive as police abuses, and which may in fact be police abuses, but it's also a response to economic conditions that are not going to be solvable so long as we have the present group of people, whether they be Republicans or Democrats, running the country. In fact, real wages for working people have not increased in real terms since the 80s. The business community, starting in the late 70s, early 80s, certainly during the period of Ronald Reagan, became powerful because it understood that in order to destroy the unions, they had to be better at doing what the unions did. So the unions, being dummies overall, fell into the trap. Ronald Reagan decertified the Air Traffic Controllers Union, which then made it open season on everybody. And the business councils were created so they could raise money to destroy unions and destroy the power of working people. So if you don't believe me, go next time and stand outside. Let's pick the corner of 96th Street and Broadway, where there is a Spectrum store and where there is every once in a while a picket from the union that was decertified, so that corporation, with public help, because it's a franchise, could pay its workers less. And look at all the people standing outside the building on a regular basis to have their money taken so they can then sit in a room and wait to have their money taken and not get serviced. Or go online and try to deal with American Express and see what happens. I mean, corporations are not the friend of people who live in settings. And the corporations have made some decisions, and that's followed through. And the end result, where I'm going to get to, is why Trump is where he is because he is the acme of that corporate control of our culture, our political culture. That tax bill alone has helped to make sure that more people get in the street to complain and to riot and do whatever it is they do, because they know they got the joke. There is no way into the system. You got to change it, whether you're Republican or Democrat. If you don't put some steam out of the system, you're going to have civil disorders.
I mean, and we're seeing that in Lower Manhattan with Occupy City Hall and the protests, the looting, which I've said many times. Protests I support and understand. The looting I thought is disgusting and it's a terrible way to make your point, because I think you lose a lot of your audience. Right. What's your thought on the getting back to the local level?
Look at it this way. If government, here's the problem in a mayoral race, if that's where we're really going. The problem in the mayoral race is not who's running. The problem is, how do you define, if you're a candidate, why you should have a mayor at all? What's the relevance of the office? Because we now live in a world where there is a relevance. If the mayor's office were relevant, if City Hall were relevant, people wouldn't be rioting in the streets. They'd be rioting or complaining in front of City Hall. But they can't, because nothing's going to happen. In other words, the great disconnection is not the right word. The great extension of that chain of belief, that rope that kind of ties people to government and to its buildings, is tethered in a way that it's going to break. And the first break is what we see in the streets today. Young people, not blacks, but white people are in the street. Why? Because they got told the con job. The con job is, you go to college, the world will be sunny and bright. What they're finding is they go to college, it's not sunny and bright. The school, the student loan business is a complete disgrace. It's a slap in the face of this extraordinary country. Because when Dwight Eisenhower and others created the National Student Defense loans, it wasn't for the purpose of making money for a publicly created corporation, so executives could make a lot of money. It was to create the next generation of people who could do extraordinary things for this extraordinary nation. That's not what happened. The fact that you have institutions of higher learning that are endowed in the billions, that are not, that have a guaranteed source of income because of student loans, paid through loans to them for tuitions, make sure that they can steal more in their foundations, do less for people, provide less scholarships, and puff themselves up about it. But what does it do for society at large? Not good. It continues to create a multiple class system. It's not just blacks and whites anymore. It's now blacks, whites in the middle, working class blue collar whites who are now opioid users. Why? Because they got the joke. There is no future. It just gets worse. And then there's the people in the less than 1% in a rigged tax system with no way out. Not good. That's not what you guys are inheriting from us. It's just not good. And, I can understand the anger about it.
So that, I mean, so you think, so you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel right now with everything that's going on?
I think that we are expecting things to somehow change dramatically in a moment. The first thing that has to happen is you really have to have some change with people who are elected. And you've got, great political science. I'm a political scientist, right? I have all those degrees and everything else, but B.L. Key was the greatest political scientist about American politics of the 20th century. Talked about critical elections. This is a critical election caused by a historical phenomenon. Either we're going forward or going back. And what the real purposes of critical elections is less about electing people than about taking steam out of the political system. If we don't take some steam out of the political system and restore at least the symbolic idea that government can do good for people, we're going to have even worse civil disturbances. That is the difference. Now, that's not an extortion tool to get people to vote for Democrats or Republicans. It's just an analysis from somebody who's academically trained. The other thing I'd say is the president understands that. That's why he is inciting middle-income suburban people to think the cities are a threat, which implies race, instability, and everything that people went to the suburbs to avoid. And by doing so, he hopes to get a white, largely white, I would guess, suburban women back in his corner to vote for him.
But you're dealing with the most vocal are those that are in the streets, no matter what race they are. They're the youth, the ones who are angry because they don't have that dream and hope anymore. Do you think, talking about getting the steam out of the pressure cooker of the system, do you think if Trump wins re-election and not Biden, that it's just going to explode in the next 4 years?
I think it will explode, and I think there are people who are purposely very happy about it. They're the same people that are defacing Catholic churches and destroying statues of the Virgin Mary. They're destroying synagogues. They are attacking our police. Yes, police need reform in this country. That is true. But what they don't need is to be put out of commission. And by doing so, we endanger everyone. There has to be a balance between the authority of the state and the authority of the street. What's happening is that the authority of the street is winning, not the authority of the state. There has to be a midpoint. So
what do you think about, Biden, feeling the burn in a sense and having to go further left when traditionally a Democrat comes to the middle, to vote, or everyone comes to the middle. I mean, that tug and it wasn't, there were no uncertain terms. I mean, it was like real requirements and demands from that side in order to get support. So, I mean, how come the Democratic Party is not unified, and how do you win without that unity?
There is no unity because there is no Democratic Party, and there is no unity because there is no Republican Party. What you have in the Republican Party, which is in as much trouble organically as the Democratic Party is a more geographically cohesive, uniform and homogenous block of states with populations that don't want everything that the other side wants, but they're not prepared to deal with the question of race in most cases and other nuances. And they're clinging to one particular leader. His name is Trump. It's not the Republican Party, it's the Trump Party. Much as there was a Reagan party, but Reagan was much more of a theistic Republican than Trump is. And I don't know what Donald Trump really is anyway, but Republicanism in his case, I think, is convenience. With respect to Democrats, their coalition is no coalition. It's a group of warring tribes and factionalism. And what you have in making up the Democratic mess is a greater and more understanding knowledge of the facts of our lives, which are that this is no longer or soon will not be a country where it's the bulk of its population has European lineage, number one. The demographics are shifting rapidly. The acquiescence to the deep left as a belief somehow that that's who you need to win the election is nothing more than extortion technique, because they know that's not true, and they know they want to be in charge when it's over, and they're going to disrupt the seniority system in Congress and disrupt the way government functions, because their job's to disrupt. Why? To replace the present system with what they believe to be the truth. There will be a redirection, as there should be, in foreign policy priorities as part of that. People will be looking less to the Middle East, and they will be looking to probably Latin America, the Caribbean, and Asia. And the end result, if they do that, which is where we're going, will be the removal of American influence in greater parts of the world. And people in your generation should be reading Thucydides about the Sparta-Athens conflict and what it means when the power in power is removed by the power that wants to be in charge. And that is a disaster. And if they give up the Mediterranean basin, and that's part of the deal that the left seems to think they need to do by destroying the Israeli relationship, Israel will be fine. They'll sell their goods and their brains to China and everybody else. And Americans of your generation, when I'm not here 20 years from now, will be sitting down eating hay 3 times a day.
I'll be living in Israel then.
Yeah, that's what will be happening.
Yeah. What do you think?
That's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary, and I'm happy that you're saying it, because I've had those conversations privately, and a lot of people.
They'll be eating hay and straw. It'll be good. Their children will be. The idiotic idea is that somehow this will just continue because it always has. And the other idiotic idea is that somehow the world system that functioned with great success, because we didn't kill each other. People forget, period of 1931 to 1945, the day the Japanese walked into China, largely because they wanted resources and people didn't tell them no. Sounds familiar, right? The end result was 100 million dead people. Anybody who doubts the desire of the Americans to maintain their position until the last 5 years or so, or 10 years really, should really go to Normandy and see all the dead people lying there who didn't make 20, 25. So the present condition is not a normal condition. Normal condition of humans is to be at war and to kill each other because they're tribal. Margaret Mead was right, and so was everybody else. Look, the great book by Graham Allison that some people, who was the chronicler of the Cuban Missile Crisis, wrote a book about the probabilities of the Americans going to war with the Chinese, and he rated it about 5 out of 9. And Henry Kissinger, certainly no liberal, was pretty clear that we are, in an article in the Atlantic, 2 years ago, maybe a little more, said, we are closer to war with China than we've ever been. Your generation, by and large, has paid no price, borne no burden, and yet expects that this will just continue. And they're in the streets. It's not how it works. I understand being in the street. I don't understand not knowing history.
And it definitely repeats itself. What about, recently in New York politics, we just finished some recounts at the Board of Elections. AOC's candidates seem to have, really swept. Do you think first of all, it's unbelievable. You have elected officials who, spent decades in the New York State Assembly. You have, others that are now out. Why does she wield so much power?
It's not about her wielding power. That's not what's going on. She is very important at the moment. She is not the leader of a political group. She's the leader of a movement. Her language and her emails is about a movement. That she raised $6 million or so to win her last election isn't emblematic. People are engaged in a movement because there is no legislative means as yet of dealing with the issues they face. She will not. That's why she voted against the bailout packages and the other stuff, because those acts would remediate some problems that people are experiencing. What you're going to see with the left, once they take power, and they will ultimately, is there will be no desire to remediate anything. There will be desire to keep the revolution going. That's how people get destroyed, and that's the history of movements like that. Once you create legislation and you ameliorate a condition, then the movement ceases, we know, to have any value. That's not what she wants. She wants that movement to continue. So does she have power? Her generation has power. There is a general angst about conditions. And I don't believe that the basic way we do this has changed, because the outcomes are still the same desired outcomes, and the tactics are still the same, And the thing about message is still the same. How we deliver that is different. The failure is in the delivery, not in the ideas.
So are you sort of saying that she likes and would promote the anarchy, and until the White House is burning and she plants a flag on the lawn, not going to be over?
It won't be over until their version of the world wins. And what is their version of the world? Their version of the world is different than your version of the world. Their version of the world is Medicare for all, but unions are not going to be able to negotiate that because it doesn't exist. And if they can't get it, the unions won't exist anyway. It's not about collective bargaining and collective discussions. It's about something else. It's about an experiential reality that your generation or the generation with you, right up behind you, has experienced, but those of us have not. A world where civics do not matter, discussion is not significant, and there are predisposed ideas. There is no civic culture. There are no Kiwanans, no Lions, no Masons, no fraternal organizations. The de-religification of America is part of what we're seeing. If there's no communal sense, what's the purpose of living? Therefore, it's kind of almost a nihilistic approach to life.
I mean,
destroy the institutions to force them to function. If they don't want to function, destroy them.
I mean, now more than ever. I mean, after the wars, 10, 15 years ago, everyone was saying, Bush did that. Who's going to pay for that? My generation. Now you have this tremendous amount of spending. Who's going to pay for that? But really, and realistically, who the heck can pay for universal health care? All these universal.
No, we need universal health care, not a question. We need a system that's fair. Obamacare went a long ways to doing that. The attack on that is about, from a libertarian perspective, which is really about the thieving insurance industry, which has more tax breaks than anybody else and provides less for fewer people at a higher cost. And they now own. It's funny. You talk about my career. I don't know how many years ago. I don't want to tell you. I went to a meeting and I pitched. I wanted to be the consultant to I think it was the AMA PAC. In those years they had it and they were spending a lot of money. And I went and they said, well, what do you think about this? And I said, you got it wrong. I'm being a wise ass. I said, your problem is not the trial lawyers, because that's not the problem. The problem is the insurance industry. The doctor looked at me and said, you're absolutely wrong. He's a staunch Republican. I said, let me tell you what's going to happen. It's Marxian theory, except the other guys are going to use it. He said, what do you mean? I said, they're going to control the means of production. They're going to control the producers. They're going to control the location of production. And you're going to be wage slaves. And they said, you're out of your mind. Well, what's happened? The insurance industry, using HMOs and other devices, has done what? Destroyed, by and large, the most amazing medical system in the history of the world, and made it so expensive through regulatory activity that benefits the insurance industry by reducing that which they have to pay. Obamacare did the opposite, made them responsible, and that's why the Republicans and their allies in the House and Senate have frankly tried to undo that which worked.
So you think we should be moving in a further direction of universal health care?
I think we ought to think about what this country will look like if it survives. And part of what that has to look like is that people don't get suckered into buying properties because they're black in inner cities with guaranteed mortgages that in fact are not guaranteed or may be guaranteed, and they're quarantined to particular areas of a city where rats are running around, their children get bit in the faces, and people can't get a decent checkup so they don't drop dead from a disease that's preventable. Decent societies do that.